So yeah, it was quite a shock when we realised we were losing the equivalent to a full-time wage just through bad tracking.
Yeah, and I think LJP Communications, the retail business we run aside from Collier Pickard, is very similar to a lot of retail businesses up and down the country. A lot of these businesses will just be tracking sales on an Excel spreadsheet when realistically the right time to move to a CRM is a lot sooner than they think.
So yeah, today we're going to go through what was happening in the business at the time, the big things that were going wrong, and then the things we sort of implemented to get a better outcome. So yeah, obviously going back to 8 years ago, as a business, we were just using an Excel spreadsheet. There were lots of sort of issues around that. I think we're just going to go through sort of what they were.
Yeah, so what were the key issues for you in us using the Excel spreadsheet?
So the main one I kept coming back to was sort of staff engagement. The staff were sort of moaning about not being able to see their commissions, system being slow, orders being deleted. And when staff aren't engaged on the sales floor, that's never a good sign.
And what were the actual business problems that come from that?
So it started being a bigger issue that we needed to fix when we realised from getting one of our team to go through a Excel spreadsheet that took him a good few days that we were actually losing around 2,000 to 3,000 a month in missing sales that we just weren't able to track properly for an Excel spreadsheet for loads of different reasons. The main one was order numbers being entered incorrectly, people breaking formulas on the spreadsheet that meant sales would go missing, people deleting them, not maliciously, but accidentally, just through not knowing how to use Excel properly.
And how was it that you decided on who should be heading up that change?
We headed it up by, there was one person in the business at the time who was really leading the Excel side, but getting frustrated by it with the time it was taking him. And it was taking him away from his day-to-day jobs that at the end of the day were earning the business money. He had a real strong belief and passion that there were two systems out there that we could potentially go to because he had the skill set to do it. He was the right person.
Okay, and what was it that, so obviously moving to these new systems, there would have been an investment involved in that. Was there a process you went through with the person heading it up to work out, actually, is that investment worth it?
So one of the big drivers behind it and the main reason we decided to move was because we knew we could solve the missing sales. We were losing two to three grand a month, sometimes more. And that was the big driver behind moving it. There were lots of other smaller things, but that was the main thing in my head at the time that I thought I needed to fix straight away.
Yeah, so I think that's a very clear metric that the value of the new system can be measured against. You mentioned as well that there were other smaller issues, staff engagement, things like that. Do you think that was also had a knock-on effect to the business's top line figures?
I think when you're obviously working with salespeople, if they don't have the right visibility on their numbers, it's very hard to motivate them. Obviously, all our salespeople within the company are on commission. And going back to sort of 8 years ago, it was very hard for them to track what they were going to earn, where they were month to date to target. Whereas now, one of the better features that we've got is that they can see where they're at. They can work out their commission. So it gives them clear goals throughout the month and they can look back at previous year's performance as well because everything's on this one system. Whereas with the spreadsheets, they couldn't look back without going to the person who was controlling them and asking for the data. So you could get the data, but it was long-winded, so people didn't do it.
Yeah, so headline figure there is that immediately it looks as if you can sort of save the 2 to 3 grand with the missing sales, but realistically, it's probably a lot higher than that through getting your staff engaged, motivated, just through small, simple changes. So going back to when you delegated the task of finding a new system to a manager, what was it that made you pick that particular person?
So yeah, one of the things we do a lot at LJP is delegating and empowering. And in this particular project, we had a manager who was really passionate about it and he also had the skill set to do it. So I think my job as a leader in the company was to give him the autonomy to go out and deliver that project under the guidance that we set that would really bring a good benefit to the company because he was there on the sales floor. He was seeing the issues. He was speaking to the team and he could really see, he had a vision in his head of where the system needed to be to get us the results we needed. Okay, so once he'd gathered the feedback from the team across all of our sites, what were the sort of things you were hearing that were the biggest problems once we'd actually spoken to the team?
One of the biggest problems was the speed of actually inputting sales and things like that. And as we touched on, seeing previous performance where they were at to date up against their targets. And then something that we hadn't actually considered was managers giving the sales team targets that are visible other than just up on a whiteboard out the back. So a lot of the stores, before we implemented a CRM, their targeting system was essentially the manager would work out how many hours each member of the team was working and put it on a whiteboard out the back. And that was how the sales team knew their targets. They didn't actually have a system to check those targets to see where they were up against them. That was one of the things that we hadn't really considered before we decided perhaps now's the time to look into the system. So I think the particular person who headed up the project had a really clear understanding of exactly what it was we needed. And then he took the time to go out, speak to other partners to find out what they're using and see what just retail in general was using to track their sales. So I think we've got quite a specific need in the type of stores we're running are sell a specific products and their sell contract plans, things like that. But ultimately, it is quite, although on the surface of it, it looks like quite a niche product we would need. Realistically, we could probably use something that a lot of the market was using.
So yeah, once he'd got the requirements and had a vision in his head of what he wanted to get out of the system, how did you narrow it down?
Well, he went out and spoke to other partners to find out what they were using. He looked at other different franchises and retail stores within different sectors to find what the tools were that were out there, and he narrowed it down to two, which essentially all of the other partners were using. From there, it was really seeing which one we think we like the look of. So we had demonstrations of both systems, and they were both fairly similar in what they could do. So it came down to really what one we preferred the interface of. So we spoke to other partners, and essentially we realized that if it was working for them, it would probably work for us, or at least it would be a lot better than what we're currently using. So we kind of just took the dive and went with what a lot of the other partners were using.
So what benefit did the team see from the change?
The major change that they saw was that they have visibility of their targets and their commission. It was a lot quicker for them to input their sales, and the accuracy of the sales they were putting in was a lot higher. So it was saving them a hell of a lot of time. After each sale, they weren't having to spend 5-10 minutes finding the right SKU, putting it into the right cell in Excel. Instead, they were literally just scanning the receipt or an order number, and it would automatically input everything into the right fields. It would put in there how much commission they were going to earn from that sale. They could then look at a dashboard and see where they were now up to their target. The sales team also felt like they were empowered to take control of their own performance, which from there we saw an immediate uplift in the revenue we were getting from each one of their sales, because they saw the real world impact of what they would actually be getting from it rather than just a number on a spreadsheet. It brought it more to life for them. What was it that you saw immediately from a kind of management business leader point of view?
So yeah, the biggest thing was on the bottom line. When we were using the spreadsheet, we were, like we said before, losing 2 to 3K a month. When we moved to this system, we were able to accurately track where the sales were and then log that they were missing. Then we would retrospectively get paid for them. So that was the biggest thing. But also from a sales management point of view, it was a lot easier to see where our lower performers and high performers were. And that meant that we could really recognize the higher performers and give them the recognition that they deserved. The lower performers could then get the support where they were struggling. And I think it was really good to be able to see the sort of longer term, where they'd been the previous year or previous months, and see how far they'd improved. Or if someone had been going backwards, we could look into the reasons of why that was happening. And that could have been a variety of reasons. But from having the data, that gave us a really powerful start, and it really empowered our managers to go out there and have these difficult conversations with the team if they're performing badly, but also have the really good ones when they were doing well.
So across LJP, we've got a 100% adoption rate of this new system, which now we're in Collier Pickard. We see actually that's really rare to get that across a business. What is it that you think drove that 100% adoption rate?
So I think the fact that we were using a spreadsheet before, and that it was really hard to use and there were lots of negatives, people were wanting the change. And the fact that we empowered the manager on the shop floor to help build this system and help select the one that we wanted really gave the team confidence that this system was going to provide them benefits. And I think as soon as they started using it, they could see it was quicker, they could see their sales figures, And I think that's the main thing salespeople are in particular looking for. They want to see their figures and they want it to be quick. It can't be a slow process because at the end of the day, they want, as soon as they've sold the tariff that they're selling, they want to move on to the next one.
So something I think if you went into LJP compared to a lot of other businesses is if you ask one of the sales team or one of the managers what system it is they're using, they actually view it as an operating system, not a CRM. Whereas in other businesses that have a poorer adoption rate, the staff members will just view it as a CRM, which gets put in a bit of a box. People view it as something that's just there to hold customer records. It's not actually something they should be working from. So the way that the new system in LJP become actually something that's really easy to use, the staff were actually living in that system and doing their work from that system, and they enjoyed using that system. It was much easier for them, rather than it just being somewhere they go to put almost like a history book of what they had done, something they actually enjoy using, so they want to go there to do their work.
So now we've moved system, what problems are we still hearing from the team?
So when we moved from Excel to a CRM, we weren't planning to move to a market leading CRM. We knew our needs were fairly basic, so we went for a fairly basic platform, which has solved a huge amount of issues. But one of the problems we're facing is it's not a platform that's investing in its infrastructure necessarily. So the system can be quite slow to use. So although there is absolutely a time saving there in that there's less steps to upload a sale, it still can be quite slow to load different pages, which leads to a bit of frustration there. And then when those pages do load, they don't necessarily look exactly how the team would want them to look. They may have to flick between a few different pages to find the data that they're looking for, which also can lead to frustration there. And where we have saved time, and as the industry has evolved, there's a lot more that we need our staff members to be doing. Now that business is operating within the realms of FCA regulated products, there's a lot of steps that our staff have to do outside of where they track their sales, which means they are using multiple different tools, which perhaps could be brought into that system. So instead of tracking sales in one place and then using different tools to check that those sales meet the required standards in terms of compliance or communicating with other team members, that's all done outside of that platform, when really I think the next step for us to take this system to the next level would be to bring a lot of that into the system and have it run a lot quicker. And perhaps if the team or the management were able to configure pages to look exactly how their team needed them to look, that would really be the next step in our CRM journey. What are some of the frustrations that you see from a management and business leader point of view?
So one of them is commercially. We have so many different SKUs that as a business we can sell, and there are some that make more money than others. We don't really have the ability within the system to pinpoint that. And I think that would, if we had the ability to do that, that would add a lot of value commercially and add revenue to the business. I think in terms of our people, the reviews we do, we have to input manually. There is a review tool within the software, but we don't actually use it because it doesn't really fit our needs. So if we could have that within the software, it would make it a lot better for us. It would save us time in terms of inputting, which would improve employee engagement because it would all be done automatically and it would save them about 30 minutes per review. And now I've been at Collier Pickard, I've seen that lots of this stuff can be done. I can see the dashboards that you can create, the individual reports, the team reports. I can really see a vision of where I'd want to be. It's just how we get there.
So now we've spent time in Collier Pickard and we've seen a lot of different systems and how different businesses have wanted those systems implemented. What do you think good would look like for LJP?
So I think good would look like for LJP is that everything would be in one place. So for example, the reviews would be there. Commercially, you could pick out SKUs and pinpoint the ones that you think are going to make you the most money within that month. Compliance-wise, it was all within that system. So effectively, we're giving the team a one-stop shop for everything across the business, and we're not asking them to go between 4 or 5 different systems. And I think in terms of our team, I think all the stuff we're hearing, that's what they want, and that would add real value to their days, save them time, and also just give them the ability the managers the ability to oversee their stores in a much more efficient way.
So we've identified that there are problems in the system we're currently using. So we need to run a cost-benefit analysis to work out if it is worth us upgrading. Take me through the cost of what our current solution is.
The cost we face at the moment with it is we have a lot of manual processes, and that adds a lot of time to lots of people across the business's days. We have a cost to compliance errors. If we can streamline that and get that in one place and make it more efficient, we should reduce that. So yeah, at the moment when we're reconciling sales, I think we could make that more efficient. Yeah, so we need to consider how we could make the process for reconciling sales more efficient, if we could make that quicker, or we could still make it more accurate. So yeah, we need to consider missed opportunities. So if we could get better data on all the different SKUs that we sell and then pass that on to the team members across the business, managers and sales advisors, that would add real value and really increase the bottom line across the business. So Ollie, if they're the costs that we've got now, what are the costs of change across the business?
So the things we need to consider when we're looking at the cost of change, things like implementation costs. To build a platform or configure a platform to do exactly what we need, how much is that going to cost? Have we got the skill set to do it in-house, or do we need to go to a CRM platform and a partner to configure it or build it for us? We need to consider the cost of licensing. Once we've worked out what the cost of now is and what the cost of the change is, how do we work out what value that can unlock?
Okay, so obviously we've uncovered what the problems are. I think it's really now for us unlocking how much value fixing each problem will have. So if we fix the compliance issues, how much money is that actually going to save us? And how much in terms of employee engagement is it going to improve? Because employees don't want to be being spoken to about compliance all the time. If we take away the admin tasks, how much value is that going to add us? Can we redeploy some of these people to different roles to bring more revenue in, or add more value on the sales floor through coaching if the managers have got less back office admin tasks? And if we get better reporting on the SKUs, how much value is that going to add? If employees are selling a SKU that has a 10% better bottom line across a business with 30 staff, that could have a big impact.
So if we go back to 4 years ago when we were making the change, what's the biggest thing that you learned that you would pass on to another business owner?
So yeah, good question. I think the biggest thing I'd take away is you've got to listen to your team, and you've got to delegate and empower one person who's got the passion for that project. There's no point giving the project to a person who isn't passionate about it. You need that person to have a vision in their head of where they want to get the project to go to, and have the ability to take the feedback from the team, negative or positive, across the journey. Now, Ollie, now we've been through this journey, what's the biggest thing you wish you'd known back then?
The biggest thing that I've learned since we made the change was that actually just buying an off-the-shelf product isn't the only answer. Actually buying something that can be configured and is a platform that can be built upon, you can then configure it to be a full operating system for your business, not just somewhere that's used to track sales and do one task. It's actually somewhere that's can be used across the board to save everyone time. And if I'd have known that 4 years ago, I probably would have made a different decision.
So Ollie, if there was another business trying to make this decision, there's 4 questions I would ask them. Do you actually know in hours or in pounds what your current process is costing you each month, or is it a guess? If a key team member left tomorrow, would the process survive them leaving? When was the last time a number you reported turned out to be wrong, and how did you find out? Could you say with confidence which parts of your product or service range are actually the most profitable?
If you would like to take advantage of the lessons that I've learned, get in touch with Collier Pickard today for a free 30-minute consultation.